The game is over. India all out for 234. So Australia have won this game by 209 runs. A huge victory, a well-deserved victory on the back of that outstanding batting on the first day. They've claimed the mace, they've claimed the prize, and they've claimed the joy of being now officially the #1 team in Test match cricket. A huge victory from Australia. You could say before lunch on the final day, handshakes with the umpires, and everything's gone smoothly here. It's been played in a very good spirit, full of sportsmanship and good cheer. And the batsmen out there in an embrace, Marnus Labuschagne with Siraj. Australia win this game, the final, by 209 runs.
It's been a dominant display from Australia as well. That partnership from Steve Smith and Travis Head in the first innings, helping them get up to that 469. It was a mammoth total for a first innings. We always knew that as soon as Australia could get through the top order of India, it would be tough, and then they dismissed India for under 300, went back out to bat and got more runs on the board, and it couldn't have been better for Australia really leading into the Ashes to win in the manner that they have, to be as dominant as they have. Everyone's had a go, everyone's had a bat, a bowl, and it's been the perfect warm-up for them, and obviously it's not just a warm-up, they're now Test champions of the world.
Yes, India sliding away very quickly. 7 for 70 they lost today. And the big wicket, we mentioned that of Kohli. And now a slow ripple of applause as Australia makes its way down towards the presentation area. So we'll have coverage of that presentation for you. And the handing over of the mace, which, of course, New Zealand have held for the last 2 years. And as I mentioned, Australia were a bit miffed 2 years ago not to be in the final when the matter of over rates cost them the spot. And the matter of over rates might be something that it'll be explored and will be wounding the players' pockets as a result of what we've seen here with a very slow over rate throughout a grossly absorbing match. One of the best games of cricket you'd want to see for a final, and Australia have won it by a pretty handsome margin in the end. Simon Mann's alongside me, and Aggers is here. It's been a good net for the Ashes, I think, Simon, but more importantly, it's, I think, just top things off for Australia. As I say, we're a bit miffed not to be in that final 2 years ago, and they've shown with this display that they are, most of the time, the #1 team.
Well, Australia are in a good place before the Ashes series starts next week, but this is a discreet competition and they've won that, and that's a great feather for them, really, to wrap up the match today. Cricketing Logic said at the start of this day's play that Australia would go on and win it, and it's proved to be the case. The players gathering at the far end of the ground for the presentations. What we can do while we wait for a reaction is look back at the game and see what we've learned. Aggers is here, Jim's here as well. Look back at the game and look forward as well to next week. What Australia have learned, what England might observe watching on. What they've seen, if they have been watching, I'm sure they have in the last
playing golf,
few days.
Aren't they?
Well, they'll be watching as well, won't they?
They won't be watching this, will they?
Well,
it's not the Ashes.
Well, I think the first thing I want to say is actually I've been wrong. I didn't really think this concept would work. Mm-hmm. And we've seen 2 good finals now.
Yes.
And I needed a lot of persuasion earlier on.
We'll come back to that in a moment. I guess let's join Henry on the far side of the ground.
Alongside Steve Smith. Now, that is some achievement. What are your emotions after that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of hard work's gone into the last couple of years, obviously, to firstly get to this situation, to be able to play in this final. And then, I feel like we've dominated the game probably from day one. Maybe let them back in glimpses. Maybe a few errors with your catching and a couple of no balls in that third morning, I think it was, and then a couple of rash shots potentially in the second innings. But outside of that, I think it was a pretty well polished performance, and the guys came out really well today. And we knew obviously Jinx and Virat was a big partnership to break, and I thought Barrel's spell there was outstanding. He bowled beautifully and got a couple of breakthroughs early and kept us on our way.
And that is the key moment of the morning, isn't it? That catch that you take to dismiss Virat Kohli. Talk us through it.
Yeah, it was obviously a big moment. We know how good Virat is, and particularly chasing a total. So it was a huge moment. Fortunately it stuck, but I thought it was a great lead-in from Baz. It was a really good spell. Beat the bat a couple of times and looked threatening. So, opened the game up for us. And, those couple of wickets, him and Jadeja, who's been batting nicely as well in that one over, really opened the game up for us this morning.
Test Championship is a relatively new concept. Does it mean a lot to you as a side to have this official title now as the best Test side on the planet?
Yeah, I think it's great. We sort of said since this started, it gives every game you play a lot more relevance. Firstly to get to the finals, a big achievement, and then to win, it's great. We obviously probably can't celebrate as hard as we'd like to with a game not too long away, but we've still got to be proud of our achievements for sure.
How does this fit into build-up for Ashes series? I mean, not necessarily how it would be designed, but how have you found it?
I think the timing of the final for us obviously isn't ideal, but I don't know where else you'd fit it in the calendar. So, for us it's obviously a 6-test summer over here. It's a nice start to it, and hopefully we can keep playing some good cricket.
Simple question. I think I know what your answer will be. You'll probably say you want to win every single game, but if I'd given you the choice between lifting this mace or lifting that rather smaller trophy here in 5 weeks' time, what would you say?
Yeah, I can't say either's bigger. They're both big. We play for 2 years for this moment, so it's a huge moment. And then the winning an away Ashes has always been on my bucket list as well. So I can't say one's bigger than the other really.
Steve, many thanks for your time. Really appreciate it, and many congratulations.
There we go, Steve Smith with Henry Moran. I love that comment there from Steve Smith, with a game not too far away. Of course, he means the first test next week at Edgbaston. So, John, you were talking about the concept of the World Test Championship and having a final. We've seen 2 now. We've been at both of them. We saw New Zealand beat India in a rain-sodden game in Southampton that went all the way onto the 6th day. Wonderful weather, great crowds for this one. I mean, it has been a fantastic occasion.
It does need a 6th day, I think. My concern about it was always that when they started mooting this, it was going to be the top team of if it was a draw, that the team that was leading the table would therefore win it, and that was, I thought, wrong. And they have changed that, because a draw is important, and you can't have a team just hanging on quietly for a draw if possible.
I have to interrupt you again, Jonathan. Henry is with Nathan Lyon.
Well, Nathan, smiles all around. That feels like quite a significant achievement in the story of this Australian side.
It's massive, mate. I'm really proud of the guys over the last 2 years and the brand of cricket that we've played all around the world. So to come here today with the game still on the line, with the quality of batters like Virat and Jinx at the crease, like we knew we were going to have to be hard work. So extremely proud of all the boys, but this is one to enjoy.
What was the conversation overnight? Because it did feel like the game was in the balance.
I think it's just about doing the basics. And when we've been, our method over the last couple of years has been really calm at the crease, really clear, and just make sure we're doing our bowling well in partnerships and doing the basics really well. So we can complicate the game sometimes, but when we do that, we're usually in a decent spot.
What about this surface? Sort of thing that you wouldn't mind seeing for the rest of the summer over here?
It seemed like it was good for everything. If you're good enough, you're able to get runs, and if you're good enough with the ball, you're able to get something out of the wicket. So it's obviously the start of a massive summer for us here in England. It's going to be a different challenge, Ashes, but to be honest with you, that's the first thing away from my mind right now, that we've got to make sure that we enjoy this one.
Is it? Have you not thought about the Ashes series?
Well, we've had this. Yes, of course, I've had one eye on the Ashes, but leading into our preparation, it's always been about India. So we'll enjoy it tonight. We'll sit down, we'll reflect on it and prepare for the Ashes.
And what about the workload of you as a spin bowler? Slightly different, of course, from the fast guys, but it is quite an intense period, this. 6 test matches in quite a short period of time.
Yeah, well, I got away with one pretty easy here, only 19 overs for the game or so that's pretty easy for me. But it's going to be a challenging workload for all of us, but we're lucky we've got the best medical staff in the world, and we're very lucky.
Which trophy would you rather, if I'd given you the option of one or the other ahead of this summer, the Mace or the Urn?
Both.
I knew you'd say that. Really? As simple as that?
Silly question. You're asking a professional athlete if you want to lose. So I want both. So it's been an amazing start here. But England, there's going to be a different challenge totally together. But we've got so much respect for the way England goes about it. So they've got some superstars in their side. But as I keep saying, we'll enjoy this one, then we'll move on to the next one.
Nathan, many thanks and many congratulations. Not for the last time, Simon. I've been told by an interviewee it was a silly question.
We'll be back with you for more of those questions in just a moment. Doubtless, Henry on the far side of the ground. Nathan Lyon knowing exactly how many overs he'd bowled as well. You know, not a great word, like 19 or so overs, was 19.3, and he took 5 for 60, and you feel he has the potential to be such a threat, especially if it is going to be dry in the next few weeks, and that seems to be the long-range weather forecast. So an excellent occasion, Australia dominating, winning by 209 runs. If you have just joined us, and you look at that partnership on the first day, 285 between Smith and Head, you know, almost the difference between the two teams.
Yep, that was the difference. That extraordinary afternoon. And if you look back at the way this match fluctuated, it's hard to believe that two batsmen could bat for the rest of the day at 3 for 76 without giving a chance. And that certainly was the difference between the teams in many ways. But I think the discipline of the Australian bowling, their relentlessness, this is a feature of the way Australia plays its cricket when it plays well. I think that was on evidence throughout. So Nathan Lyon, what will be interesting in terms of Nathan, because we've heard Justin Langer saying, and I also spoke to a couple of other people, that Mitchell Stark's really made no impression at all in his follow-through. So there hasn't been much for Nathan to bowl into down at that end, perhaps why he was bowling around the wicket all the time. But that is going to be an aspect of the Ashes that Australia's going to have to work on. Do they want Stark as one of their frontline bowlers because he also brings that into the game, or are they going to go another way with Hazlewood? That's another I know. But back on Jonathan's point, what I would like to know is this a one-off game in future? Is it best of 3? Have we got the right format? And where do you play this game?
Yeah, well, I mean, it has to be a one-off, doesn't it? Because you just wouldn't be able to fit it all in, and that's why the 6 days is important. It's cheapened by the fact that India and Pakistan don't play, so that's obviously a big failing of this. Of this, but you know, if you want some sort of a pinnacle game in the Test calendar, I think this has worked well. I mean, people have obviously responded to it. We've had good crowds. We've had good cricket both this time and 2 years ago. I think the better team has won both times. I think the players are starting to focus on it a bit more. There's more conversation about the points that are at stake. The fact that over rates matter, all those sorts of things. I think that's what the ICC was trying to do, to give Test cricket some focus, and I think it works. I do think it works. It's a funny old thing, you know. Some people played 20 tests in a cycle, others played half a dozen, or it is 10. You know, there are lots of things that are flawed about it, but actually, when you do have something like this just sitting as a pinnacle of every 2 years, I think it's worked.
Everyone plays 6 series, 3 home and 3 away, and the next iteration begins pretty soon. What would happen, I suppose, if you had, say, New Zealand and Sri Lanka in the final, in terms of crowds, venue, that sort of thing?
Well, that's the challenge, I guess, isn't it? And I mean, people do respond to Test cricket in England, don't they? I mean, it's a safe place to have it, because you know you do get supporters from most countries coming. It helps. Of course, India have been in these last 2, and they've had big crowds. But whether you can take it somewhere, well, of course you can. You know, there's no reason why it has to be here all of the time, but it seems to fit well in the summer. And you know, I think both Southampton and here have done a very good job of hosting it. And I think people like coming to England to play Test matches. You know, if it feels like it's the home of Test cricket.
Now, Andy Zoltzman wants to say something, and then we're going to bring in Deep Das Gupta.
Just to highlight the importance of that partnership, even quite even either side of that. 285 between Head and Smith. Outside of that, Australia averaged 26.7 runs per wicket. India, over the course of the game, 26.5 runs per wicket. That was the absolute key to the game.
Yeah. It felt like it on the first day. It felt like that was when the damage was done. Looking at the surface now, it's brown, it's dusty. The ground staff have been out there and all the dust has come up. On the first day, it was green. India won the toss. They put Australia into bat and they did not make the most of it. 327 for 3 on the first day. Deep with us as well. What does this mean for India? How hurt will they be? What's happened over the last 5 days?
They definitely would be hurt because it's not just about last 5 days. It's been a drought since 2013. The last time India won an ICC trophy was 2013 here in England, and ever since... Actually, if you think about it, India hasn't won a knockout game in an ICC tournament since then. So it's not just about this final alone. It's about the last almost 10 years now, if you look at it. We've done all right to qualify for the Test Championship or qualify for the knockout tournaments, but in the end, haven't won a knockout game, and that says a lot. The last 10 years.
And from an Indian perspective, playing the game in England...
Yeah, I mean, that's a conversation. I was listening to you three, and yeah, I mean, it has worked. There's absolutely no two ways about it. Love this format, love this tournament. WTC puts all bilateral series into context, points involved. But why can't we have a 3-test match series? Right? And obviously not at a neutral venue. Obviously, if England, for example, England's not playing, possibly can't have a 3-test match series here in England. But number one team gets to play at home. So there's an added
on India's
incentive
pitches that we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years? Wouldn't be much of a spectacle, would it?
Why not? Why not?
The pitches have been horrendous.
So would you have the same problem in Australia when matches finish in 2.5 days?
Well,
that's happened. Australia's finished in 2.5 days. In South Africa, it's finished in 2.5 days. We don't hear anyone talking about that then.
India have won in Australia too.
Yeah, I mean, India won't mind going to Australia.
Right. Well, Australia finished top of the tree, didn't they? So by your rule there, Deep, the final would have been in Australia, 1 versus 2.
Absolutely. And then you will have an opportunity of playing a 3-test match series, because then you're playing in somebody's home condition. Then you will it'll have a series kind of a feel. But this has worked. I completely agree with Aggers that way. This has worked. It's not that this hasn't. But this is another option that you might want to have a look at.
Yeah, I suppose one of the problems is fitting it all in. I mean, India have just come off the back of the IPL. It only finished a week and a half ago.
Yep. But that's always going to be the case, isn't it?
Because they could give up the Champions Trophy. I mean, the ICC do not need 2 50 overs tournaments. They could give that up every 2 years, and you could that would free up a bit more space.
Deep, from just from an Indian perspective, what we're looking ahead to the Ashes. What have you made of this Australian side, going into what's going to happen in the next 5 weeks?
Extremely interesting. I'm looking forward to it, because one of the things that obviously that you want to see is this Australian bowling unit. I think they're very good. Apart from Mitchell Starc, everyone else, you see them bowling the right channels, the right areas which you need to do in these conditions. It's going to be extremely interesting, and especially the brand of cricket that England's playing for the last couple of years against this bowling attack. And if there's a little bit of that's going to be, it's going to be extremely close. I'm expecting somewhere on that 2005 series. So I'm booked from next weekend on. That's Ashes for me.
Oh, that's good. You'll be watching on.
The interesting thing about this final is that I'm assuming the pattern will continue, that this game is booked in for a venue a number of months, a year ahead, right? So in 2 years' time, if England are playing in the final, is it a home ground advantage because it's going to be consistently played in England? Does that matter?
Well, that's one of the issues, isn't it? And you think back to the World Cups, the initial 50 over or 60 over World Cups as it started. England, first 3, and then other countries started to say, actually, we want a bit more of this. It does work in England, the point that Jonathan made. It certainly works when the weather's like this, and it also works when India are in the final as well, because they bring a lot of support. You imagine in England against India over the last 5 days, the support would have been massive. There wouldn't have been any spare seats at all in the ground. The weather that we've had recently.
You'll guarantee the bigger crowds when it's staged in England. I mean, if you want to show your showpiece match on ICC television and it's from Johannesburg and there's no one there, you don't want to put that out around the globe as being a pinnacle event, do you?
Yeah. Also, I mean, you talk about Australia playing at home. I mean, could Australia have played at home at this time of year? Probably, you'd have had to go out to Cairns or somewhere, wouldn't you?
You would.
Yeah.
No, you wouldn't be doing that. You'd have to play in the summer. So, to me, this is ideal. As I say, of all the grounds in England, this is most like Australia. It's an oval. We have lots of ovals in Australia. We love ovals. And I think the Australians really feel at home in England most of the time. They're so used to being here in various guises, county cricket, whatever it may be. So they're very comfortable here if that's the way it continues. As we look ahead for another 2 years, there's probably only, as we speculate, only 3 teams in the hunt. These 2 in England. Really, they're ahead of everyone else on the consistency of winning in Test cricket.
Yeah, I mean, that feels right, doesn't it? I suppose it's who you play. Some teams avoid others, and if you can keep away from playing too many games against India, Australia, and England in the rotation, it's there. The schedule for the next 2 years, you can go and have a look to see which teams play against which teams. I mean, England play against the Ashes, and they've got the 5 Test series in India, which is you can see them struggling there. Next winter, you can't see many victories there. But how many other teams will go and play in India? So there is a bit of Jonathan alluded to it. It is a little bit unequal. But you heard also Steve Smith there saying, it gives Test cricket context, and it does feel a bit odd now when you play a Test series and there are no World Test Championship points at stake. So that's already changed.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And Test cricket just needs the focus. It needs that focus, and this does give it. It's not perfect. So I mentioned India not playing Pakistan. That's a shame, and that's not good. I just suspect change anytime soon. But when you're trying to do something with what you've got, I think they have made the best of it.
Yeah. The 2 teams are down there on the far side of the ground. The presentation is taking an awfully long time to happen. It's cricket. It's what happens, isn't it, in cricket? But they're all ready. They've got the TV interview section set up, and they've got that area as well, which you saw at Lords in 2019 when Owen Morgan went forward to pick up the World Cup. It's going to be Pat Cummins who's going to be doing that fairly shortly. Our ABC listeners are only going to be with us for a couple of minutes more. What thoughts would you like to leave with them, Jim, before next Friday?
Well, Australia are in a pretty good place, you'd have to say, coming out of this game. But another match, another situation. Their major issue really at the moment is whether or not they go with Cummins, Stark, Hazlewood, Boland. Which of those 3 are going to play? Because Stark is seen by the Australians as a very important person, not only because of his bowling, but because of his follow-through, you could say, and some footmarks that might be useful for Nathan Lyon. So that's their little dilemma, and it's a nice one to have.
Quick thought from you, Jonathan, before we...
Yeah, let's roll our sleeves up and get ready for Friday. Everyone listening in Australia, they'll be up all night. That first test is so important. I think if England win that first test, and they do it in the way they've been playing recently, the Australians are going to have to go away and rethink their game. If England thrash about and get it wrong, then I think they could do the same at Lords. They're going to be stubborn. They'll say, we'll go harder, and that will give that opening for Australia. It's everything on that first test for me.
Yeah, well, we can barely wait. You almost want it to be happening tomorrow, but Australia got some celebrating to do, a little bit of celebrating to do before then.